Alright, so there's two types of perception that Descartes um, came up with. The first type is called external sense perception, or ESP. Right? External sense perception is literally what it says, that you perceive your reality through your senses. Seeing, touch, hearing, tasting, etc. That's external sense perception. The second type of perception, which he says is the most true, pure type of perception, is called clear and distinct perception. Clear and distinct, CDP. Okay? Now, Descartes favored CDP over ESP because, as we mentioned earlier, our senses can lie to us. They can. We can look at the distance and see that a tree, for some reason, is taller than another tree from a long distance. But the closer that we drive to that big tree, we realize that by the time we get to it, it's actually smaller than the tree that was behind it. And because our senses told us that it was bigger from far away, yet we experience that it's actually smaller when we get there, this is an example of how our senses can lie to us. This is something that does not happen, however, with clear and distinct perception. Clear and distinct perception is not experienced by the senses, but it's experienced through the Cogito. It perceives, CDP, mind you, perceives a priori knowledge. And we discussed this a little bit with Plato. Clear and distinct perception allows us to be aware of certain universal laws, universal facts, innate ideas, if you will. And certain examples of this are like identity, causality, cause and effect, thinking, substance, contemplation. All of this is a type of clear and distinct perception. We know that it's true because it can't be faked. For example, the most basic type of a priori knowledge that we know through clear and distinct perception, the best one is math. Right? No matter where you go, no matter what planet you're on, 1 plus 1 is going to equal 2. Right? But let's try using the method of doubt to try to disprove this. Using the method of doubt, Descartes would say, oh yeah, well show me a 1. Well, I can show you 1 phone, I can show you 1 clip, I can show you 1 can, but never can I show you a 1. Sure, I can draw a 1 on the board. That's just a drawing of a board. And remember, through the forms, even if I drew a 1, it's only mimicking the true essence of the number 1. So you'll never be able to see 1. It doesn't exist, except in the Cogito. Through the Cogito, we are able to understand fundamental universal laws. First it started with math, now it's physics. These are just laws, they can't be broken. They can be harnessed and used, but you can't ever break out of it. And we only know this though through clear and distinct perception, CDP. And remember, these are experiences that you cannot experience with your senses. You can only experience them through your mind. If you really want to, dance on the wild side, you can say love is a quality of clear and distinct perception. The only problem is much like the forms, there's going to be many different versions of love. So what we're boiled down to is saying stuff that cannot be disproven, like science, math, the cosmos, etc. That can only be experienced through our Cogito. Okay? Let's see. Here's another reason why external sense perception can lie to us. For example, say you're outside, you experience this wave of heat. You also hear the sound of a leaf or a branch being singed. You hear the sounds of crackling. And therefore, based on what your senses have experienced, you may say, oh, there's a fire nearby. Only fire does this. But when you get close to it, it's none of that at all. Maybe it just turns out that someone is playing with firecrackers, or someone is, what do you want to say, just tearing leaves for some reason. You know, when you were a kid, you tore leaves, whatever. So what your senses may experience is not necessarily the truth. Just imagine the last time you were at a club or at a bar. Your senses say, you know what, that person's interested in me. Well, until you go up there and your Cogito meets with their Cogito and you realize there ain't nothing coming. Alright? So this is one way that your senses can really lie to you. And secondly, the other way your senses, ESP, lies to you is that if you go into a situation with an already preconceived idea as to what you're going to expect, then every time you view this situation, this experience, you're viewing it with what's called the mind's eye, like your mind has an eye. And if you look at it through your mind's eye, then you're going to be biased to what it is. You're going to apply other identifications to it which may not be similar to how someone else may experience it through their ESP. And so that's how our senses can lie to us. But never can you say 1 + 1 = 2, give it to your buddy and say, prove that wrong. They won't be able to do that because it's an a priori idea. It's an innate idea. And only through CDP can we experience it, and what experiences it, as in what uses CDP, is the Cogito. Right? You can't doubt away math. Pretty bizarre. I mean, I hate math, but unfortunately, there's a reason why it exists everywhere. In fact, as a side note, it should be noted that many of our greatest scientists in the modern history have said that if we were to ever make contact with any alien intelligence, that the way that we would do so is through math, because it is the only universal language. It's the universal language on Earth. It's the universal language in the universe. Why? Because nothing can be done without that a priori piece of knowledge, math. Okay. So let me review, make some recaps here. Especially, you should already be making the connections between Plato's idea of knowledge and Plato's forms to what Descartes thinks is, true knowledge. And he doesn't call it the forms, he just calls it innate ideas or a priori knowledge. Same thing. A priori knowledge is the same thing as an innate idea. Okay. Now, the way that they're similar is that the most basic objects of knowledge are general principles, like the basic laws of physics. Okay. So the goal for both people is to penetrate behind that veil of appearances, and for Plato it's to discover the form, and for Descartes it's to discover that it's your Cogito that's doing all the thinking for you. And while they both agree that true knowledge cannot be experienced by way of the senses, both of them agree that the only way you can experience anything is through a priori knowledge or innate knowledge. And while Plato doesn't go on to discuss God, Descartes does, and said by very quickly saying, because the Cogito is absolutely true, it can't be doubted away, it must have come from something that's also true, that thing is called God, and since God is a source of truth, God cannot be a deceiver. There'll be more about that in your Descartes notes, but I hope that makes sense. The French are pretty good in doing that. So take this exam and get ready for the homework. See you later.